Hello, everyone, and welcome to Purple Coach Conversation with Anne and myself, Tanya. Our goal is to normalize, educate, and inspire conversations around diversity and inclusion. We are both coaches, mothers, entrepreneurs. We're not diversity experts, but we aim to have conversations with people who have something interesting and unique to say about their journey and experiences in diversity and inclusion.
Yes,
we're joined by Marta, and I will let Anne introduce her.
Thank you, Tanya. So today we're joined by Marta Hyder, who I have to say is my best friend and my soul sister. So me and Marta met several years ago now when we were doing our NLP course together. And ever since we have formed a really not just close relationship, but like a spiritual relationship, and therefore being my soul sister. And I'm really, really privileged to have her on here. And Marta, I'm gonna let you introduce yourself in more detail before I get too sentimental.
Thank you so much. Yeah, let's not go towards that sentimental path because probably it will leave us in tears. But thank you very much for such a warm introduction, and thank you very much for having me. Yes, so I'm Marta Hyder. I come from Poland. I've been here, I think somewhere between 7 and 8 years. I actually don't know. I think it's 7.5 years, and it's been quite a beautiful and full-on journey for me, but definitely beautiful so far, and it will stay like this. And what has always been like ever present for me in my life is that, you know, deep knowing that there is so much more to us as people. And then I was just really passionate about finding out that what is it that makes us who we are, what we think, what we say, how and why we identify with as certain people or with certain things, and the way we act, what's behind the way we act, and how we are conditioned basically. And of course, that awareness that if we know where our behaviors come from, then we can then change them. And it's, you know, it became like a very empowering factor in my life. And the beauty of it all is that the more I learn about it is, I just keep finding out that there's so much more to learn. And it's just kind of, it keeps pushing me towards that journey even more. And I am particularly passionate about all that I just mentioned in around feminine energy and in like females' lives, really women life. And that empowerment is very important to me, and understanding that where, you know, the deep conditioning that particularly doesn't serve us. And I am very excited about the program I'm creating at the moment for like an ultimate reconnection for women. So we can reconnect fully with ourselves and rediscover ourselves and have that homely feeling within ourselves. And it combines the approach of NLP, recall healing, Reiki, movement, and also like physical trauma, how it's the emotional trauma, how it manifests itself in our physical bodies. So yes, it's been an ever-present subject in my life, and it only makes me more and more I feel more and more attracted to it. So I really hope that the beautiful things are still yet to come. Yes, so thank you.
There's no doubt beautiful things will come from this, and we'll make sure at the end of the interview that you're going to share with us how people can connect with you and follow you. Yeah. So you just, where do you spend most of your time? Is it is it coaching that you're professionally coaching?
I am throughout the like transition from freeing myself from the corporate work to just being a coach full time. Okay. And I do feel like this is the year when that significant change happens. So yes, fingers crossed. I feel very empowered, and I really would like to surrender to that charity work as well. So I'm in contact with quite a lot of charities supporting women around Brighton, and I do feel it's going to be a big part of my mission as well.
Wow, that's we want to hear more about that for sure. And you were mentioning during this introduction about, you know, how we inherit trauma, from our ancestors, and this connection that we have with where we come from, and sometimes without necessarily knowing it, right? We have this trauma that we need to heal over our lifetime, so we don't repeat kind of the wounds that we've inherited from the past. And when we spoke before this interview, you talked about, how part of the brain comes from our ancestors and it's in our DNA, and you were referring to your Polish upbringing, and we would love to hear more about that and what you've learned from this.
Yeah, so it's such a interesting subject, and it's very broad as well, so it can be approached from the historical point of view, which the mainly the stigma, I mean, not only the stigma from the history, but the history itself is very much embedded within our, the way we are, to the point that it's passed on in our DNA. And of course, when the history repeats itself, which we know it likes repeating itself, then of course the impact of it is even stronger. So so from the historical point of view, and my personal view on the Polish identity, is that we have that oppression quite strongly embedded within our culture, and then and that and I can strongly feel it. I could feel it throughout the collective consciousness and collective behavior in Poland. And it's not about this judgmental approach, but it's just noticing it. And it's just, there is a lot of I think that stigma and that oppression just created, and that ever-present word for so many years, created that kind of lack of openness, or doesn't support that openness that we could have. And this openness also, it's an openness to others, but also generally, and each other, even within, Poland, but also is that openness to other cultures, to other, other people, other races. And then it can still be noticed, and it's just like you said, we are not even aware of it, because very often that lack of openness, or let's say racism in Poland, is it comes from because the way it is, for the sake of it. So a lot of people inherit that closeness, that close approach to others, but they don't even know where it comes from, apart from the fact that this is how they feel it should be, or this is how things are. And it's a little bit sad. And I mean, it is not even a little bit, it is sad. And that lack of openness, it was kind of one of the reasons I kind of wanted to break that pattern, and I came here, and I think I'm actually reading a book now, which is, I would say it's quite random to this subject, but I found this quote that is very relevant, and I have that quote for you here. The book is called The Delusion of Passion by David Anderson and Mark Nathan. And they say, because not only the history has this impact, but our peers and our environment has massive impact on us. And they say that we share our circumstances with our fellow peers that shape the way that we view the world. Similar circumstances produce experiences which create similar character traits, which produce similar patterns of behavior, which make it easy to use broad generalizations. And generations tend to see the world in a very similar way. And when I am referring to this, is because it can be very much noticed within the older generations, like of my grandparents, that closeness and that stigma, this this approach that nothing comes easy. Really, you have to work really hard and to almost get very little in return. And the same, that closeness to other nationalities, and then when you ask them why, they actually can't say why, like this. So this kind of racism flows through somewhere in the background without actually a justification, really, especially if we refer to these days. And then of course, and then this approach and this energy is passed on to younger generations, right? And then we know that we soak up everything around us like a sponge up until we are, I think, 7 years old, right? And then we use that as ours, as our opinions. We kind of, this is what contributes to our identity, when we don't even make that judgment for ourselves. It's just what we take from our environment, you know.
Yes.
But it's changing as
Yes.
well. So,
and Martha, thank you for sharing that. And I wanted to bring up this idea of when you talk about identity. And in the book Whistling Vivaldi, there's this element of identity contingency. So your identity is defined. You get those stereotype threats as well. So you have different social identities, and sometimes what you inherit will influence your outcome in society. So let's say he gives the example of tests that were done of students, the white students, and they were black students, and they were told that they were white students, and they would underperform when they knew that there would be white students around, just because in their head they were conditioned to think over their childhood that they were not as good as white students when it came to academics. And the same reverse happens when white athletes are on the field, athletic field, with black athletes, and they underperform in their presence because of the conditioning of saying, okay, they will be faster than me, right? So I'm just wondering, with the Polish culture, what are those contingencies? If you could give us, if you talked about the fact that they're closed, they're not open, maybe, but are there others as well that you can share with us?
So those labels and living up to those labels is really interesting, and it's just, again, it's ever present. It's not only about like races, it's just generally it is present in our lives, and if we don't realize it, it's quite a dangerous game, because it's usually a very massive limitation for ourselves and for our development, So of course, labels don't have to be negative. Even if they're still labels, they don't have to be negative. So, one of the positive labels about Polish people is that we are, that our hospitality is just, extreme. And I do agree with it, which is amazing, but sometimes it just also takes the extreme level of being like people pleasers, that it doesn't matter if you don't fancy having guests or you can't afford having guests, you will have them anyway, But when I came here, I didn't realize that how many differences there are between, Polish people and British people until I came here, of course, because then I had to find myself within this country and within this culture. And, with me being quite an open person, this is when I just noticed that actually that openness is defined in a completely different way. And one of the examples is small talk. There's no such thing in Poland. Like, if the small talk happens in Poland, no, I didn't even know what that small talk is. I was taught about it at school, but okay, oh hi, how are you? Oh, I'm fine, thank you. And then that was the pattern we followed at school. But I didn't realize how actually that it plays such a big part in everyday life in England. So I with me being open, I found it quite difficult to just to give it to other people. And then when other people were trying to just casually talk to me wherever I was, in the hallway, in the shop, or people who didn't know me, and they were like, hi, how are you? I'm like, what do you want from me? And that was this reaction that I acknowledged. So of course I wanted to do something about it, and it wasn't kind of aggressive reaction, but in my head I was just thinking, why are you talking to me just like this casually, and and the other label is, for example, that we are hardworking, which of course we are, and it's amazing, but I just we are like so much more to our labels, right? And then I think I have to break through those labels. And even if I wasn't labeled in a positive or negative in any way myself by others, I think I would still have those stereotypes in my head. So then I would worry that I'm perceived in one way or another. But there is also because we know there's so many Polish people here, and when someone asks my nationality, a lot of people think I'm Spanish, by the way. So when I say I'm Polish, they would automatically throw a swear word at me, because like with kind of pride that they can say that they know a word in Polish, and I'm like, that's really nice, but it's not that we just swear, right? So I think it's just some of them, people may mean well, but sometimes it's just like very limiting, because then you perceive, with this ever-present swear word that everyone knows in Polish, that Polish swear word that everyone knows, but there is so much more to it, right? But then of course I didn't want to approach it in any judgmental way, and I wanted to break myself through it. And I realized that it doesn't matter how well you speak English, how great or good my English was, but it was a taught language. So and then it was taught at school, and then I used it like for corporate purposes, and then I realized it's nothing like English that's actually like everyday English. And then I really struggled to feel my identity, feel myself being here, because then suddenly I wasn't able to express myself in a way I would express myself in Poland. And then there was this and this period was around like 2 years, I think, when I couldn't fully feel myself. And of course, we know we're always evolving and we're always changing. But I couldn't find that, that kind of leeway into just being here and feeling homely. And so I think that was one of the biggest things for me to, break through just, being a Polish person in England and just become slightly British in a way that, British people are, which is the way that probably makes you feel more comfortable and homely. And then I just, when I met my husband, then I was kind of pushed into speaking English all the time. Like, I had to, talk about my day, about my feelings, about everything. So, and then this is when this massive shift happened to me. And I started thinking in English. I started dreaming in English. And I stopped trying to translate myself, not only, myself as a person, from Polish to English. I basically started just, accommodating being British, and
you said, sorry to interrupt you, Marta. I just want to go back to something that I found quite interesting when you talked about the stereotypes that we have.
Yeah.
And so we have like external stereotypes, or people have stereotypes of us, but it was interesting that you have stereotypes of yourself, and how those stereotypes that we have of ourselves play on our minds and change our behavior and how we show up and how we behave. How we behave, how we show up, how we think, what we become paranoid and not paranoid about as well. Being Polish and being East European, and the what stereotypes did you have of yourself, do you think, that influenced how you navigated in society in England? So this is not so much what other people have of East Europeans, but the ones that you took upon yourself and you stereotyped yourself, and then
it's really interesting, because of course those stereotypes would actually work. Having them would work against me. It wasn't the good stereotypes that would help me, feel better. These were the stereotypes that were infused with worry. And so one of them is like probably because of Polish accent when you try to speak English, and then you're not just very much infused with British English while living here. And I just thought that I always sound harsh, and then that people would perceive me this way. Oh my God, she's harsh, or she's rude. And then it's a little bit funny, because you can't really get rid of your accent very quickly. And I think it's just so, it's so well known that probably it's not such a strong stereotype being there, but for some reason I thought it was like this. And then, just like you said, it's basically we self-sabotage ourselves because of those stereotypes and worrying, because it's also the energy we produce, and because if you worry about it so much, then it will manifest itself somehow, right? The other stereotype is that, you know, that Polish people escape the Poland to come here for better, you know, living conditions, and you know, it's true, but I just how do I put it, I just didn't want to be seen as a person who comes here and just tries to get the most out of this country for my own benefit, if it makes sense. So I didn't, and then I was so worried that, you know, I can be seen this way, that I think it almost affected like my kind of self-worth. For example, when I was looking for work, you know, we are known to be very hardworking, and I think we are at our core, we really are. And then it's very much embedded in the history. We couldn't afford different, you know, paying people for, you know, different things, getting them down, for example, in our house or around our house. So we had to do it ourselves. And that hardworking trait is like within us. But also, I think it's almost like we try to work even harder to be seen in a better way. And then I think I got caught in it. And it's not, of course, it's not rewarding. You know, hard work is rewarded. But if you try to kind of strain yourself to prove something, it doesn't necessarily have to be rewarded. And then you feel like, and then you create that vicious circle for yourself that, oh, you see, I work really hard and I'm not appreciated enough, or I work really hard and I'm not appreciated enough because I'm not British, you know. And I guess that this was also the case for Polish people, like a real case, but it wasn't the case for me at all. I just created this case for myself when I came here, you know.
It's interesting you say that as well, because I think sometimes the stereotypes that we create for ourselves and in our head, I mean, sometimes they're there because society has kind of shown you those stereotypes and treated you in a certain way, and therefore they're very legit. But it's also catching yourself when you then start to stereotype your way yourself in a certain way that doesn't benefit you. And then you think, oh my God, I'm doing what I'm asking other people not to do towards me. And I'm now doing it to myself. You don't catch yourself, you know, getting into that little rabbit hole and spiraling down with all these negative thoughts and negative stereotypes of yourself and limitations as well of what you can and cannot do. Just before we go to the next question, I just want to go back a little bit, because there was something that I found really interesting when we're talking about the DNA and how certain things are conditioned within us. And you spoke about like how in Poland there's this kind of like, there's a whole trauma built in your DNA. And you said something as well about you know, not accepting foreigners and so on, different races and so on. If this is the case, and we've seen and we've read, the science says that it is the case that we do inherit trauma and we do inherit other things in our DNA. How do you think society needs, from your perspective, how do you think society needs to heal from this trauma response, whether it's the trauma response of racism or having to, you know, work 100 years to get this little, like, how do we heal from something that is passed on in our DNA to do better?
I think that in any case, if it comes to healing, it starts with awareness. So if we don't realize what needs to be healed, we can't heal it, right? So I think, and of course, you know, there is so much awareness being risen by everyone around the, you know, racism. But if we, I think, don't do, and I mean the collective awareness, but if we don't do our homework, like personally, individually, then we don't want to change as individuals, then of course collective change is very important. But this collective change very often, like protests, they carry, for example, a lot of like aggressive energy, quite a lot of like anger with it. And then sometimes maybe the message isn't really sent, you know, doesn't get to everyone, you know. in a way that it would like to be received. So I think it's just like people have to make this conscious choice to just feel like, to ask these questions: why am I against something, or why am I not so open towards something or someone, and where does it come from? Because just like I said, very often it's just I witness it, like, and this is the paradox. I was here with when I came here, I was surrounded by Polish people, and then those Polish people, I remember, were in the car, and it was heartbreaking. And there were some, I think, Middle Eastern, someone from Middle Eastern countries crossing the road, and that Polish person said, "Oh, I just love to take a pistol and just shoot them," and I was left speechless. So I'm like, why? And then literally there was no answer to it. It was like, oh yeah, because, and then I heard some stereotypes like, oh, because they steal, oh, because they beg, oh, and there is just literally, there was no justification to what that person said, but this is what they carried with them, because this is probably how deeply conditioned they were. So if people like this don't actually take a step back and just feel like, hold on a second, why do I actually think this way, and what really drives me to think this way, then probably that healing will still take a lot of time. Because if people who are very strongly against other races are bombarded with all those protests, and the good intention coming from the protest, but quite an aggressive intention, it will create even more resistance. So I think there's just, if I'm honest, there's no easy fix to it, apart from raising awareness in different ways, hoping that it will reach as many people as possible. But I think it's just because it was formed throughout so many generations, then it would take generations to gradually heal. And of course, I think we create much more. We've managed to create much more openness now, and then we don't inherit so much resistance for other races anymore, but it's still there, and I think it's just it takes patience, and I think it would take years, however it sounds. And my husband is Asian, and then when we went to Krakow, which is like a multicultural city, because there's a lot of students from different countries, and he was still getting the looks like, and these weren't the looks particularly of curiosity. I mean, of course it comes from the curiosity, like, oh, this person is different, but it was more in a way that, like, you could feel that resistance rather than openness, like, you're different and I'm curious to meet you. It's just like, you're different and I'm not too sure, so
yeah, I can associate with that. When I was in Krakow, I definitely felt a lot of that as well.
right.
Several years ago now, but I definitely felt the looks were not really curiosity, was more like, but again, I also met a lot of lovely people. So I think when it comes to such things, you have to take, you have to choose, like, okay, you know what, like, I'm just gonna focus on the lovely people rather than the people who are still stuck in their own ignorant
exactly kind of and I think that,
but I think to mention on for me, I think, just to kind of clarify something, and I think it's really important for me to say this, when it comes to the protest, I think it's important to have protests. They don't need to be violent, of course, it defeats the purpose, but the protest is to say that we are not going to be treated like this. We are not going to be killed in the streets in front of people looking at us and literally murdered. We are not going to be shot because we are reaching for our driving license. When you've asked us for a driving license, we're not going to be shot in front of our children like that. We're not going to be tackled down on the ground like that. Like, we're not going to be shot in our own beds while we're sleeping. Like, the protest needs to happen because we as Black people have had enough. And I'm sure even a lot of other races, and yourselves as well included, can go, yeah, it's enough. Like, this is enough with the killing, enough with the senseless killing. When we talk about, people who are still stuck in their racist ways. I don't think it is a responsibility of me as a Black person to get you out of your ignorance of being racist.
That's
like
just
that
it.
is on you, right? That is on you. If I want to protest because I feel like my people are being killed like so unjustly, and that is the right that I should have. I don't think it should turn violent. It's not, it's not about that. But I think, and you mentioned a really good point as well, like they need to come to the awareness of what are they doing? Why are they living in such anger? And because really, hate is anger. Why are they living in such anger? Why are they living in such hate?
And it's not justified.
And it's just them. They need to deal with that, right? Like it's up to them to do the work, and it's not up to anybody else, quite frankly, to do the work. It's up to the individual.
And
but I'm just looking at time and cautious of time, Tanya. Do you want to get on to the next question?
I was thinking that I think the best way in the idea of lack of time would be to let Martha tell the audience where they can connect with you and ask you more questions for sure. And if you can share with us things that have inspired you, anyone that you think we should be following or looking at more closely, please let us know.
And books, and books as well, because I know Marta is a huge fan of reading, so she's always recommending lovely books for me to read. So I mean, as well.
I have all sorts of them, if I'm honest, but I know that we did mention a very important book during our conversation pre-call before this call, and it was the Sapolsky's book, Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And I think this is where he beautifully explains. It's quite a fact-heavy book, but it's very well explained how we inherit what we throughout our DNA, how the history is embedded, and what shapes us really historically. And I think it just gives it's such a stream of awareness, that book, that everyone who's even interested about this diversity doesn't really have to want to convert straight away, but I think it just gives so much awareness, this book. And I think this is the one that I would definitely recommend, especially in the spirit of this call.
Yes, and he wrote, remember we mentioned he wrote also this one.
Yes, it's the newest one,
Yes, which is also even more into the social cues of why we respond in a certain way to things that look different, smell different, that you sound different, all the 5 senses differences, how we respond in a certain way. And how can people connect with you? What's the best way to reach out?
So I would just recommend my email address, which is it's hyder.marta@gmail.com. Yes. And we can always take it from there.
And the program that you were talking about at the beginning, is this on any website?
It's not yet, because it's being created.
Okay.
But once it's created, which will be in the upcoming month, hopefully, it will be published, and people will be made aware of it.
Amazing.
Oh, brilliant. All right, I want to thank you so much, Marta, for joining us on Prepper Coach Conversations. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for the very candid and open talk. We always appreciate that, and we think that's where the most impact comes in. And I want to thank all the listeners as well. Make sure that you follow Marta. You're on. Is there any social media that you
I actually am not at the moment. No.
All right, no worries. Thank you once again, everyone. Make sure that you check out our Facebook, and don't forget to follow us as well on Facebook and Instagram. And thank you once again for joining us today. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Thank you very much for having me. And I just want to say one thing, that these differences, it's actually such a beautiful thing. And if we learn how to connect for differences, we can actually create a very beautiful balance in the world, and to connect and inspire for differences.
Love that.
Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.